Maria had never imagined that life could change so suddenly. For years she had lived quietly in the small rural town, doing her best to raise her little boy, Leo. She was not rich, but she had always managed to keep things steady. She worked at a small local store where she earned enough to buy food, pay rent, and take care of Leo's needs. Life was simple, but it was stable. She felt safe knowing her son never had to go to sleep hungry. But sometimes, life changes without warning. One morning, when Maria arrived at the store, the owner, a kind old woman, stood at the entrance with a sad expression. She told her the store was closing. Business had been slow for months, and the landlord had increased the rent. They could no longer afford to keep the shop running. Maria felt her legs weaken. She had worked there for 3 years. It was the only place in town that was hiring when she first moved there. Losing this job felt like losing her only support. Still, she tried to tell herself it would be okay. She had always believed that if she worked hard, everything would work out. But that hope began to fade as each day passed. She walked from house to house asking if anyone needed cleaning, gardening, or even a few hours of help. She walked so much that her shoes became thin. But many families in the town were also struggling. A few people gave her small tasks, but it wasn't enough to buy proper groceries. She always made sure Leo ate first, even if it meant she went without food. On the 3rd day without a real meal, Leo began to cry more often. He was only 4 years old, too young to understand why the kitchen shelves were empty. He would pull at her clothes and say, "Mama, I'm hungry." Hearing those words broke something inside her. She hugged him, told him she loved him, and promised him that things would get better. But each promise felt harder to believe. By the 4th day, Leo grew quiet. Instead of running around the house with his usual energy, he lay in her lap with tired eyes. His little hands felt weak when he held her fingers. Maria tried to distract him with stories or games, but hunger has a way of making everything else disappear. She felt as if she was failing the only person who depended on her. By the 5th day, desperation settled over her like a heavy blanket. She opened every cabinet once more, hoping to find something she might have missed: a forgotten packet of rice, a can of beans, anything at all. But there was nothing. She looked out the window as the sun streamed through the dusty glass, and she felt a mixture of fear and sadness. The world kept moving while she and Leo seemed frozen in a place of worry. Her pride had always been strong. She didn't like asking others for help, but hunger tests even the strongest people. She considered going to the town's small market to ask if anyone had leftover food, but she feared the embarrassment. People in small towns talk, and she didn't want anyone to think she was irresponsible. She had worked hard her entire life. She had never expected to be in a situation like this. That evening, as Leo cried softly again, Maria held him close and whispered soothing words. She tried to stay strong for him, but tears slipped from her eyes. She didn't want him to see, so she turned her face away. She felt helpless, not knowing what to do. She spent the night thinking about how they would survive if nothing changed. The next morning, something inside Maria shifted. She looked at Leo's tired face and made a decision. She couldn't wait for help. She had to go look for it, even if it meant swallowing her pride. So, she washed her face, tied her hair back, and gently woke Leo. She carried him outside because he was too weak to walk far. It was a bright morning, with birds singing and a gentle breeze moving through the fields. But the beauty of the day didn't change her situation. She walked along the dusty road, hoping that somewhere, someone might offer a bit of work or a bit of food. She passed by several houses. Some people waved, unaware of her struggle. She tried to smile back, but her heart felt heavy. She did not want to beg. She only wanted a chance to earn something, anything, that could help her feed her child. As she walked farther, she came across a wooden fence that bordered a large ranch. She had seen it many times before. It belonged to an older man named Mr. Harris, a quiet rancher who kept mostly to himself. People said he was kind but preferred solitude after he lost his family years ago. His ranch stretched wide with green fields, cows grazing peacefully, and a small white house sitting in the middle of the land. Maria never thought of approaching him. They had only spoken a few times in passing. But today, as she walked near the fence, she saw him standing by the gate, adjusting a rope. He noticed her from a distance. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to turn back, but Leo shifted weakly in her arms, reminding her of why she was there. Mr. Harris watched her for a moment. His eyes moved from her tired face to Leo resting heavily against her shoulder. Something in his expression softened. Slowly, he walked toward her. "Morning," he said in a calm, steady voice. Maria greeted him back softly. She felt nervous, unsure how to begin. Should she ask for work? Should she explain her situation? She didn't want pity, only a chance to survive. Mr. Harris looked closely at Leo. The child's cheeks were pale, and he clung to Maria silently. The rancher frowned slightly, not in judgment, but in concern. "Is the boy all right?" he asked gently. Maria opened her mouth to speak, but her voice cracked. She hadn't planned to share the truth, but the words came out before she could stop them. She told him everything: her job loss, the empty cabinets, the 5 days of hunger, the faint crying through the nights. She didn't add drama or exaggeration. She simply told the truth. Mr. Harris listened without interrupting. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. He didn't show surprise or doubt. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if understanding more than she said. When she finished, she lowered her eyes, embarrassed. She waited for him to speak, unsure of what he would say. He took a deep breath and stepped back slightly. "Get ready to come with me," he said simply. Maria looked up, confused. She wasn't expecting those words. She didn't understand what he meant. Was he offering help? Was he telling her to follow him? Her heart beat faster, a mix of hope and uncertainty. But the look in his eyes was clear, firm, calm, and sincere. It was the look of someone who had made a decision and meant it. And in that moment, for the first time in days, Maria felt a small spark of hope return to her heart. Maria stood still for a moment, trying to understand the simple but unexpected words Mr. Harris had spoken. "Get ready to come with me," he had said, with a calmness that made her feel both nervous and hopeful. She had not asked for anything directly, yet he had offered something without hesitation. It felt strange, surprising, and almost unreal. For days she had walked around town begging for small tasks just to earn a little food. And now this quiet rancher was telling her to come along with him, as if he already knew what she needed. Leo rested weakly on her shoulder, breathing softly as he leaned his head against her. She looked at her son's face, pale, tired, and innocent, and she felt a sudden wave of emotion. Whatever Mr. Harris meant, she knew she had no choice but to trust him. She needed help. Her child needed help. If this rancher was offering even the smallest chance of relief, she could not refuse it. Mr. Harris didn't wait for her answer. He simply opened the gate beside him and gestured for her to follow. "Come on," he said in a gentle voice. "You and the boy need something warm." Those words alone felt like a lifeline. They walked slowly through the gate and into the ranch. The air smelled fresh, filled with the scent of grass and soil. Birds flew above them, and the cows grazed quietly in the distance. Everything about the ranch looked peaceful, almost like a different world from the empty house Maria had left behind. As they walked, Maria noticed how steady and sure Mr. Harris's steps were. He moved with the ease of someone who had lived on the land his whole life. He didn't speak much, but something about his presence felt safe. Maria had always believed that a person's actions revealed more than their words, and in this moment, he was showing kindness that she hadn't expected from anyone. "Your boy's name is Leo?" he asked after a few minutes. "Yes," Maria replied softly. "He's 4. Mr. Harris nodded as if remembering something important. "He looks tired," he said. "We'll fix that. Thing. I would be Yolander. Thing the rounder. I would wasn't today. Thing the wander. Thing the rounder. Fing the wander. Fing the wander. I would wasn't too thanks. Fing the wander. I would. Maria's heart squeezed at those words. For days she had wished someone would simply understand the pain her child was going through. Now, someone finally did. They reached the small white house in the center of the ranch. It was simple but warm-looking, with flowers planted near the porch and a wooden chair sitting beside the door. Mr. Harris opened the door and stepped inside, holding it open for her. Maria hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should really enter a stranger's home, but then Leo shifted in her arms again, nudging her forward. She stepped inside, and the warmth of the house wrapped around her like a soft blanket. It was clean, neat, and filled with the quiet comfort of a lived-in place. The sunlight streamed through the windows, lighting up the wooden floor and the shelves lined with old books and framed photographs. "Sit down," Mr. Harris said, pointing to a chair near the kitchen table. "You both look worn out." Maria gently lowered herself into the chair while still holding Leo. The boy curled into her lap, his eyes half closed. She stroked his hair softly, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. She wished she could have provided better for him, but life had not given her many choices recently. Without another word, Mr. Harris walked into the kitchen area and began preparing something on the stove. He moved quietly, filling the pot with water, adding vegetables, and stirring with slow, familiar motions. The smell of warm broth began to fill the room. For Maria, that smell was almost overwhelming. She had forgotten what it felt like to smell real food cooking. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Harris didn't turn around. He continued stirring the pot. "Everyone needs help sometimes," he replied. "No shame in that." His words sank into her heart. For days she had felt ashamed of her situation, ashamed of needing help, ashamed that her son had gone hungry. Hearing someone say that needing help was not something to be ashamed of made her eyes fill with tears. She blinked them away quickly, not wanting Leo to see her cry again. When the soup was ready, Mr. Harris brought the pot to the table and poured a small portion into a bowl. He let it cool slightly before placing it in front of Maria. "For him," he said gently. Slowly, Maria lifted the spoon to Leo's mouth. The moment the warm broth touched his lips, his eyes opened wider. He reached weakly for the bowl, as if afraid it might disappear. Maria fed him slowly, watching each spoonful bring a bit of strength back to his tiny body. She felt her chest tighten as tears threatened to fall again, but this time they were tears of relief. Once Leo had eaten enough, Mr. Harris filled another bowl for Maria. She hesitated, wanting Leo to eat more, but the rancher placed the bowl firmly in front of her. "You need to eat too," he said. "A mother can't take care of her child if she's not strong." Maria nodded silently and began eating. The warmth spread through her body, easing the tightness in her stomach. She hadn't realized how weak she had become until she tasted the food. It felt like life returning to her. After they finished eating, Mr. Harris sat across from them. He folded his hands on the table, studying her face for a moment. "I've seen you walking around town these last few days," he said. "Didn't know things were this hard." "Train with Mark Don." "Train with Mark Don." Maria lowered her head. "I didn't want to bother anyone," she said quietly. "I thought I could manage." "That's a heavy burden to carry alone," he replied. "Especially with a child." "And?" Maria nodded again. She didn't know why, but something about his voice made her feel safe enough to speak openly. She told him everything, losing her job, trying to find work every day, watching Leo get weaker, and feeling like the world had turned its back on them. She didn't cry, but her voice shook as she spoke. Mr. Harris listened without interrupting, just as he had earlier. When she finished, he took a deep breath and leaned back in his chair. "You and the boy are staying here for now," he said with calm certainty. "At least until you're back on your feet." Maria looked up quickly, shocked. I can't ask that," she said. "You've already done so much." "You didn't ask," he said gently but firmly. "I offered." She opened her mouth to argue, but he continued speaking before she could. "There's plenty of space on this ranch," he said, "and plenty of work too. If you want, you can help out with simple tasks. Nothing too hard. Just enough so you feel comfortable staying here." Maria stared at him, unsure what to say. This kind of kindness felt overwhelming. She had met many people in her life, but few who offered help without expecting anything in return. "I don't want to be a burden," she whispered. "You won't be," he said. "This place has felt too quiet for too long. Maybe it's time it had a few new voices." Maria looked at Leo, who was now sitting up a little straighter, his cheeks slightly brighter after eating. She looked back at Mr. Harris, feeling her heart fill with something she hadn't felt in days. "Hope." "Thank you," she said quietly. "Really, thank you." Mr. Harris nodded and stood up. "Come on," he said. "Let me show you the guest room. You both need rest." Maria stood slowly, still holding Leo, and followed him down the hallway. The room he showed them was simple but clean. A soft bed, a small wooden dresser, and a window that looked out over the fields. It felt like a safe haven after everything they had been through. She laid Leo gently on the bed. He curled up under the blanket, looking peaceful for the first time in days. Maria brushed his hair back, tears filling her eyes again. But this time, they were tears of gratitude. "You're safe here," Mr. Harris said quietly from the doorway. "Both of you." Maria turned to him and nodded. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay kindness," he said. "Just accept it." And with that, he stepped out, leaving her in the quiet room with her recovering child. For the first time in days, Maria felt her heart relax. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew that this moment, this unexpected kindness would stay with her forever. Maria woke the next morning to the gentle sound of birds singing outside the window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The soft blanket, the quiet room, and the warm sunlight made everything feel unfamiliar. Then she looked beside her and saw Leo sleeping peacefully. His small face relaxed in a way she hadn't seen for days. He was breathing normally again. Not painfully or weakly. His little hands were no longer clenched from hunger and discomfort. He finally looked like a child who felt safe. Maria touched his forehead gently, thankful for the change she saw. She whispered a silent prayer of gratitude, and then quietly slipped out of the room so she wouldn't wake him. The house smelled like fresh bread. Maria followed the scent to the kitchen, where she found Mr. Harris already awake, preparing breakfast with calm movements. He turned slightly when he heard her footsteps. "Morning," he greeted with a small smile. "You're up early." Maria felt shy but smiled back. "Good morning. I didn't want to sleep too long. I thought maybe you needed help with something." "There's plenty of time for that," he said kindly. "Sit down for now." He placed a plate in front of her with warm bread, scrambled eggs, and a little fruit. The food looked simple, but to Maria, it felt like a feast. She thanked him again, her voice soft with appreciation. As they ate, he asked about her life, not in a curious or intrusive way, but in a gentle, respectful manner. She told him a little about where she used to live, how she had moved to the small town, and how she had always tried to give Leo a stable life. Mr. Harris listened quietly, nodding every so often. After breakfast, Maria offered to wash the dishes. At first, he refused, but she insisted. "You've already done so much," she said. "Please let me do something small." He finally agreed, and she began washing while he stepped outside to check on the animals. When she was done, she stood at the window and watched him for a moment. He walked among the cows, checking their water and making sure the fences were secure. His movements were slow but sure, like someone who knew every inch of the land by heart. He didn't seem to rush or worry. Everything about him felt steady, something Maria hadn't felt in herself for a long time. Later that morning, Leo woke up, looking much better than before. His cheeks had color again, and his hair was messy from sleep. Maria hugged him tightly, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. Then she brought him to the kitchen, where Mr. Harris greeted him with a warm smile. "Good to see you awake, young man," he said. "How do you feel?" Leo nodded shyly, still a little unsure around him, but he managed a small smile. Mr. Harris served him a plate of breakfast, and Leo ate eagerly. Watching her son eat without fear or pain made Maria's eyes fill with emotion again. She looked away for a moment, hoping they wouldn't notice. After breakfast, Mr. Harris showed Maria around the ranch. The land stretched beautifully, with rolling green fields and a small barn at the far end. The air smelled fresh, and the gentle wind made the grass sway like waves. "This place needs regular care," he said. "But nothing too hard for you. You can help with small tasks, like keeping the house tidy or feeding the chickens. Whatever you feel comfortable doing." "I can do anything," Maria said quickly. "I'm not afraid of work." Mr. Harris chuckled lightly. "I know. But you don't need to push yourself. Start slow." They walked together, and Maria listened as he explained how the ranch worked. She found it calming to hear him talk about the land, the animals, and the routines. There was a rhythm here, a quiet, steady kind of life that felt healing. When they reached the barn, Mr. Harris opened the door, revealing a few goats and a horse. Leo's eyes widened with excitement. He let out a small gasp and held Maria's hand tightly. "Would you like to pet them?" Mr. Harris asked him. Leo nodded. Maria lifted him up, and Mr. Harris guided his hand gently over the goat's soft fur. The boy giggled, a sound Maria hadn't heard in days. It made her heart swell with relief. "This is good for him," Mr. Harris said quietly. "Kids need places like this." Maria nodded. "I didn't realize how much he missed simple joy." "He's young," he replied. "Children bounce back. They just need comfort and care." Maria watched as Leo touched the animals one by one, his fear slowly fading. She felt something warm fill her chest. Her son was healing bit by bit. Over the next few days, life on the ranch settled into a peaceful routine. Maria helped with small chores like sweeping the porch, washing clothes, and cooking meals when she could. Mr. Harris did not treat her like a guest or a burden. He treated her like someone who belonged there. She felt respected, not judged. Leo spent his days playing with the goats, running in the open fields, and sometimes helping Mr. Harris feed the animals. In just a few days, he looked healthier, stronger, and happier. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maria found Mr. Harris sitting on the porch, watching the fields. She walked over and sat beside him. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "You have changed everything for us." Mr. Harris didn't look at her immediately. He continued watching the horizon, his face calm but thoughtful. "Years ago," he said softly, "someone helped me when I needed it most. It was the only reason I survived a very difficult time. I promised myself that if I ever met someone who needed help the way I did, I wouldn't hesitate." Maria listened, surprised by how personal his words sounded. "This world can be cold," he continued. "But kindness, real kindness, can warm even the hardest days." Maria nodded. "You gave us hope when we had nothing left." He finally turned to her, his eyes gentle. "You had strength even before you came here. I only gave you a place to rest." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch, the distant moo of a cow, the chirping of crickets, and the rustle of the wind. It felt peaceful, almost healing. Later that night, after Leo fell asleep, Maria stepped outside to breathe the fresh air. She looked up at the sky filled with stars. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel scared. The fear and desperation that had followed her for days had finally started to fade. She thought about the empty house she had left behind, the days of hunger, and the hopelessness that had pushed her to wander the roads searching for help. Now she stood on a ranch that wasn't hers, but somehow felt like home. She felt safe. She felt supported. And she felt grateful. As she stood under the stars, she made a silent promise to herself. She would work hard, rebuild her life, and give Leo the childhood he deserved. She didn't know how long they would stay on the ranch, but she knew that this place had given them a chance to start again. She placed a hand over her heart, whispering a soft thank you to life, to fate, and most importantly, to the kind rancher who saw her pain and chose to help. Inside the house, Mr. Harris finished putting away the dishes. He glanced through the window and saw Maria standing outside, her face peaceful under the moonlight. A small smile touched his lips. He didn't need thanks. Seeing her and Leo safe was enough, and so, the days continued quiet, steady, and filled with small moments of healing. Maria felt herself growing stronger again. Leo laughed more often, and the fear that once clung to them started to fade. The ranch, with its open fields and warm sunsets, became a place where they could breathe again. A place where hope slowly returned, one day at a time. The days turned into weeks, and each day brought a little more peace into Maria's life. She could hardly believe how much had changed since the day she had walked down the dusty road with a hungry, crying child in her arms. Now Leo ran across the field with laughter in his voice, and Maria could breathe without fear pressing on her chest. Every morning began with gentle sunlight streaming into their room. Leo would wake up full of energy, ready to explore the ranch, and Maria would smile just watching him. It was like seeing a flower slowly open after too long in the dark. His cheeks were round again, his eyes bright, and his steps strong. Whenever she watched him chase the goats or race the wind, she felt her heart swell with gratitude. Mr. Harris stayed the same, quiet, steady, and kind. He never made them feel like guests or outsiders. Instead, he created an environment where they felt like they belonged. He didn't talk much about himself, but with time, Maria began to notice things she hadn't seen before. She noticed how he always paused to check the sky before starting work, as if reading the weather by instinct. She noticed how he repaired things slowly but perfectly, never leaving anything half done. She noticed how he always made sure there was enough food on the table, even if he served himself last. One afternoon, while Maria was hanging clothes outside, she saw Mr. Harris sitting on the porch with Leo, teaching him how to tie simple knots using a piece of rope. The boy watched carefully, copying every step with tiny fingers that sometimes fumbled, but never gave up. Maria stood quietly for a moment, watching the two of them. It felt like watching a grandfather gently teaching a grandchild, a sight that touched her deeply. Later that evening, Maria thanked him. "You're so patient with him," she said softly. Mr. Harris shrugged lightly. "Kids learn fast when someone shows them," he said. "And he's a bright one." Maria smiled. "He likes you." Mr. Harris didn't reply immediately, but a gentle expression crossed his face. "He reminds me of my son," he finally said. It was the first time he had ever mentioned having a son. Maria felt a softness settle in her chest. "I didn't know you had a family," she said gently. "I did," he replied. "A long time ago." His voice held a mixture of sadness and acceptance. He didn't say more, and Maria didn't ask. Some stories were too personal to open without time, but from that moment on, she understood him a little more. She understood why he had helped her without hesitation. He knew what it felt like to lose something. He knew the weight of loneliness. And maybe, in helping her and Leo, he was helping himself too. The ranch became a place of healing for all three of them. As the weeks passed, the townspeople began to notice the changes. When Maria went into town with Mr. Harris to buy supplies, people were surprised to see her looking healthier and calmer. Some even asked where she had been. She answered politely, without going into details. She didn't feel the need to explain everything anymore. Her life was no longer something she had to justify or defend. She simply lived each day with quiet gratitude. One day, while they were in town, Mr. Harris noticed a sign outside a store. "Help wanted." It was the same store that had closed months before. But now, it was reopening, under a new owner. "Do you want to try?" he asked, pointing at the sign. Maria hesitated. For so long, she had lived with uncertainty. The idea of working again made her nervous, but it also filled her with hope. "I can try," she said, taking a deep breath. They went inside, and Maria spoke to the new owner. After a few questions, the woman smiled warmly and said, "We need someone honest and hardworking. You seem like the right person." You can start next Monday. Maria blinked in surprise. She had forgotten what it felt like to be accepted instantly. She thanked the woman over and over, her voice trembling slightly. When they returned to the ranch, Maria told Leo the news, and he clapped excitedly, even though he didn't fully understand. Mr. Harris simply nodded with pride. You earned it, he said. Hard work always finds a place to land. Maria's heart warmed. It had been a long time since she felt proud of herself. On her first day of work, Maria woke early, made breakfast for Leo, and walked to town with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. The store was small but lively. She quickly learned the tasks: stacking shelves, welcoming customers, and keeping things tidy. The work was simple, but to her, it felt meaningful. It felt like the beginning of stability again. Every evening, she returned to the ranch to find Leo playing happily or helping Mr. Harris with small chores. Leo would run to her, hugging her tightly. "Mama's home!" he'd shout cheerfully. Those words filled her heart every time. Days continued like this, steady and hopeful. Maria worked at the store. Leo learned and played, and Mr. Harris watched over both of them with quiet care. Their lives were no longer filled with fear. They were filled with routine, warmth, and small joys. One evening, as they were closing the barn, Maria turned to Mr. Harris and said softly, "I don't know how we will ever repay you." "You don't need to repay me," he replied. "Just raise your boy well. That's more than enough." "But you gave us everything when we had nothing," she said. Mr. Harris shook his head gently. "No, Maria. You had strength. All I did was offer a hand." She didn't argue. She understood now that some people help because it is in their nature, not because they expect something back. As months passed, Maria saved some money from her job. She felt stronger, more confident, and more in control of her life. But even though she was doing well, she didn't want to leave the ranch yet. It wasn't just a place to stay, it had become a home. It had become part of their lives. One evening, she and Mr. Harris sat on the porch watching the sunset. The sky glowed with bright orange and soft pink colors. Leo ran around the yard with a small toy horse Mr. Harris had carved for him. "Do you ever think of leaving?" Mr. Harris asked quietly. Maria looked at him, surprised. "Leaving the ranch?" "Yes." She shook her head slowly. "Not for now. This place saved us. I don't think I'm ready to let it go." He nodded. There was no disappointment in his eyes, only understanding. "You're welcome to stay as long as you want," he said simply. Maria felt tears gather in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. They continued watching the sky in peaceful silence. 1 year later, everything looked different. The ranch felt alive again. Maria planted flowers near the porch. Leo made a small garden where he grew tomatoes with excitement. And Mr. Harris built a new fence with their help. The little boy who had once cried from hunger now ran across the ranch with laughter. He fed the animals, chased butterflies, and asked endless questions about everything around him. Maria often watched him and felt amazed at how far they had come. She too had grown. She worked confidently at the store, saved money, and learned new skills. She was no longer afraid of the future. She embraced it. As for Mr. Harris, he was no longer lonely. His home, once quiet and empty, now had laughter echoing through the hallways. Some evenings, he sat by the fireplace with Leo asleep on his shoulder while Maria read a book nearby. It was a quiet kind of happiness, the kind that grows slowly and stays for a long time. One evening, as the three of them sat on the porch watching another beautiful sunset, Maria looked at the ranch and whispered, "This place changed our lives." Mr. Harris nodded. "Sometimes," he said softly, "all a person needs is one moment of kindness." Maria looked at him with deep gratitude. "You were that moment for us." He smiled gently, not needing more words. Leo came running toward them, laughing as he climbed onto Maria's lap. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling his warmth and strength, and in that peaceful moment, Maria understood something clearly. Life could break a person, push them to the edge, and make them feel lost, but life could also send someone like Mr. Harris, someone who offered kindness without asking for anything in return. Because of that kindness, a new story had begun, a story of healing, hope, and quiet happiness. And the ranch, with its open skies and warm sunsets, remained the place where a hungry child found safety, a tired mother found strength, and a lone rancher found family again.